In the beautiful city of Bellingham, surrounded by thick forests and a shimmering bay, two crucial parts of the community come together: Whatcom Creek, beloved for its salmon and as a playground for kids, and the Olympic pipeline, crucial for transportation across the region. Both are central to everyday life until a tragic incident occurs where they intersect. On a lovely summer day at Whatcom Creek Park, two young boys are having fun in nature, playing beside the water. But suddenly, this peaceful place is shattered by a massive explosion, setting everything ablaze. What or who could have caused such a devastating blast? A long steel pipeline, operated by Olympic, runs from refineries in northern Washington to Portland, Oregon. This pipeline is key for moving fuel and is controlled from a distance in Renton. There, computers oversee the flow of fuel, looking out for any issues and managing pressure to prevent mishaps. However, hidden problems within the pipeline are about to unleash disaster. June 10th begins as a normal day for the staff at the control center. Then, around 4:43 in the afternoon, an operator notices a mistake in the computer logs that track the valves and flow of gasoline in the pipeline. This is the first hint that something is amiss. After checking again, they think all is well. As fuel is moved from the Cherry Point station to the Utsko facility, controllers start to redirect it to a terminal on Harbor Island in Seattle, a standard procedure that usually goes smoothly. Meanwhile, about 100 miles away in Bellingham, locals are enjoying the warm June afternoon in the tranquil park around Whatcom Creek Gorge, which cuts right through the city center. It's nearly the end of the school year, and two 10-year-old boys, Stephen Sorais and Wade King, are playing by the river's edge, a spot where they feel secure. However, back at the control center in Renton, the atmosphere is tense. At 3:18 p.m., the operators begin the fuel transfer, but soon pressure starts to build up in the pipeline upstream from where the fuel is being sent. At first, they assume the increase in pressure is normal, just part of the routine ups and downs that happen during a fuel move. To handle this, the controllers turn on a backup pump to lower the pressure. Unexpectedly, the transfer of fuel fails, setting off alarms and causing the computers to stop responding. As the operating system crashes at this critical time, the situation worsens quickly, and by 3:22 p.m., the pumps shut down due to the rising pressure. The controllers, struggling with the frozen system, find it hard to grasp and control the quickly worsening situation. Just 6 minutes after the previous events, disaster strikes. The pipeline bursts under Whatcom Falls Park, spilling 237,000 gallons of gasoline, enough to fill 15,000 cars. A minute later, the pressure in the pipeline returns to normal, but the pipeline between Cherry Point and Renton shuts down. The controllers, not knowing about the burst, think the system is just malfunctioning. They stop the gasoline transfer from Cherry Point while teams check the problem. Thinking the issues are fixed, the controllers start moving gasoline from Cherry Point again. They don't know they're actually adding more gasoline to the spill. For the next 40 minutes, gasoline leaks into the creek, creating a very dangerous situation. Before heading out to fish at the creek, a recent high school graduate, Liam Wood, writes a note to his parents about where he's going. It will be the last note he ever writes. As time passes, the danger increases, hidden from those who could stop it. Nearly an hour after the burst, the leak detection software finally alerts the controllers to the severe problem. As they're about to start another pump, a company employee calls 911 from a bridge over the creek, reporting the smell of gasoline. Only then do the controllers in Renton realize there's a rupture.
911, there's a big smoke.
Immediately, there's a rush of action. Pipeline controllers start closing valves to separate the broken part. A minute later, police and fire crews begin to block roads around the creek and call a hazardous materials team to investigate. Gasoline keeps flowing from the burst near the water treatment plant, moving downstream and filling the water. The clear water of the creek turns milky white, polluted by the dangerous fuel. Fumes start to rise, forming a thick, choking cloud over the creek and nearby area.
Just couldn't believe what I was seeing. I mean, it was literally just free-flowing gasoline, and the vapors went as high as you could see. It just blurred the whole landscape behind the creek. The vapors were so thick.
Liam continues fishing, unaware of the approaching danger. The gasoline fumes, heavier than air, begin to gather in the lower areas of the park, including the canyon where Liam is. The smells get stronger and soon overwhelm him. Trapped by the canyon walls, he can't escape the toxic fumes. Liam passes out, falls into the creek, and drowns. His body is only identified early the next morning.
Around 2:30 in the morning, we heard steps on the porch, and well, at first I thought it was him, and it was the police. So they told us then.
The river has become a dangerous place as gasoline sits on the surface, creating an explosive mix that spreads downstream. Almost 90 minutes after the pipeline burst, the full extent of the danger is becoming clear. A 911 dispatcher calls Olympic's emergency number to ask about the leak source. They learn the company is aware and has already shut down the pipeline. Radio stations soon start sending out emergency messages, telling people to keep away from the creek. Evacuations begin for areas within 200 feet of the creek. The threat is immediate, but no one realizes just how close they are to a major disaster. Pipeline controllers finally call 911 to report a possible release of fuel into Whatcom Creek. This turns out to be a massive understatement. As gasoline flows downstream, any small spark could set off a huge fire. At the same time, two friends, Wade and Stephen, find an old cigarette lighter. Curiosity gets the better of them, and they start playing with it, not realizing the dangerous fumes and gasoline accumulating around them. They flick the lighter, and it instantly ignites the vapors with a loud explosion. Instinctively, they jump into the stream to try to escape, but they are severely burned. The explosion sends a huge fireball, reaching up to 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit, roaring down the creek towards Interstate 5 in the city center. The fire spreads quickly, extending about 1.5 miles along the creek. The entire city of Bellingham feels the impact. Flames consume the creek, and a towering black cloud of smoke rises 30,000 feet into the air, visible for miles around. The two boys are found by neighbors in shock and pain, their clothes scorched off by the intense heat. By 6:30 p.m., firefighters manage to control the major fires, and the sky begins to clear within the hour. Both boys are flown to a hospital in Seattle, but their outlook is grim. As the flames die down, the investigation into the disaster's cause begins. The National Transportation Safety Board, NTSB, discovers that the explosion was not just a random incident but the result of a series of human mistakes, oversights, and systemic failures over many years. It started in 1994 during upgrades to the city's water treatment plant when contractors accidentally hit the nearby pipeline with heavy machinery. The damage seemed minor, and due to poor checks by Olympic, it went unnoticed. Fast forward to the late 90s, when the company performed some inline inspections that should have found the earlier damage, but they messed up the assessment and decided not to excavate and examine the damaged section. Just before the disaster, the company was launching a new facility, adding to the complications. A valve that controls the flow in the pipeline kept closing unexpectedly, causing operational and pressure issues, but despite recurring problems, they did nothing. Despite these clear problems, they ignored them until the pipeline burst. The total damage from the disaster was enormous. The fire destroyed 26 acres of the creek's ecosystem, burning the soil and evaporating the water. All aquatic life downstream from the burst site died, including over 100,000 fish, about 3,000 birds and small mammals. Otters, beavers, and red-tailed hawks also perished. The explosion also wrecked Bellingham's water treatment plant and caused $58 million in damages to nearby properties. Tragically, the boys did not survive. Wade died in the early hours the day after the disaster, and Stephen passed away soon after.
My son loved baseball, and I didn't want him to suffer. So I told him there's a baseball game going on in heaven, and they needed a left-handed hitting catcher.
In a twist of fate, the boys became unintentional heroes. The explosion would have ignited those fumes eventually, and because it happened in a less populated area, the human damage was much less severe. The disaster could have been much worse if the gas cloud had reached all the way down to Bellingham Bay. Remarkably, the massive explosion and fire resulted in no other deaths, with only a few injuries reported. It was clear the incident could have been prevented many times over, and there were serious legal repercussions. In an unprecedented action, 2 Olympic employees were imprisoned for their roles. The company was fined over $100 million. Additionally, the families of the 2 boys received $75 million in a wrongful death lawsuit, while Liam's family settled for an undisclosed amount. The tragedy led to changes in safety regulations and the creation of the Pipeline Safety Trust. After the blast, Olympic halted its operations, and the pipeline was shut down for 20 months, the longest closure after an incident in U.S. history. Yet, with over 300,000 miles of liquid fuel pipelines crisscrossing America and a history of corporate neglect and human mistakes, the question remains not if another incident will occur, but when. If you found this video intriguing, please hit like and leave a comment to support the channel. Watch the next episode to learn more.